Hey there, homespun friends. It's Sherry, and it's great to see you on this Wednesday. I hope you're having a wonderful day. I wanted just to come along and share with you what I'm doing today. I'm making sourdough bread. Now, when my children were growing up, we lived in the Appalachian Mountains. We did not have a lot of nearby conveniences. We did have a grocery store nearby, but we only had one car. My husband took it to work. I wasn't always able to get out and go to the store every time that, I might have wanted to. And so I made a lot of our own bread. I made bread just about every day. And I would either make like yeast bread in my bread machine, or I would make sourdough bread. And sourdough is just one of the most delicious breads. It is easy to make. It is a very forgiving dough. I know a lot of people get nervous when you start talking about sourdough starter and feeding the starter and letting things rise for 10 hours. They start getting a little bit nervous when they think about it. But it really is quite simple. And once you get started, you will find how easy it is. Now, I think in the past I have done a video or two about sourdough and maybe showed you in the kitchen what I do, but it's so simple I can just tell you right here how to get started. Now, you can create your own starter. I think it's like sugar, potato flakes, and water. I can get you that little mixture of recipe and put it down below if you want to create your own starter. But if you're on Facebook or if you're on Instagram, you see someone who's making sourdough, just ask them if they would be willing the next time that they feed their starter and don't want to make bread with it, if they would let you have it. And this is what I did. I had a friend that lives in town here, and I had seen her for the past long while making bread, and I decided that I was going to ask her to, either let me purchase or if she would gift me some starter, and she did. She brought me some on Saturday, and I appreciate Dina so much for doing that. And if you can get starter that has been around a while, then that's what you want to do first. If you cannot find starter that's already been around, then go ahead and start your own. The reason that starter that's been around a while is better is because it has a much better flavor, and it actually makes your bread taste better if you have an older starter. The longer that starter is around, the more flavorful it is. And so this starter has been around a long while, and this is how she brought it. She brought it to me in a dill pickle jar, and this is what it looks like. You can see there it has kind of almost like a frothy top on it, and if you open it up and you smell it, it smells a lot like yeast. It has that kind of a yeasty smell to it. So this is the starter that she brought me, and she said, now by Tuesday, you need to feed it. And so yesterday was Tuesday, so I got up yesterday morning and I took my jar out of the refrigerator. This stays in the refrigerator at all times, unless you're getting ready to make your bread. And I took it out and I fed it. And what did I feed it? Well, I took the lid off and I added to this jar, well, I actually put it in a bowl, a glass bowl first, and then I poured it into this jar. And what I added into that bowl was 3/4 cups of sugar, 3 tablespoons of potato flakes, and a cup of lukewarm water. Now, make sure that your water is on the warmer side of lukewarm. You do not want it hot. If you get it too hot, it will kill the yeast in this starter. If you don't get it warm enough, then your bread won't rise and it won't taste good. So you want to make sure that it's lukewarm, but on the warmer side of lukewarm. And so you mix all that together, and then I poured it into this jar. And then I once again took I had a wooden fork, and I just stirred and stirred it inside of this pickle jar, and I didn't put the lid back on it. I covered it with the paper towel, and I let it sit all day yesterday. For about 8 or 9 hours, it sat on my countertop. And then yesterday evening, as I was preparing my supper, I made my dough. And how I did that is I took out a cup of starter, and then I put this starter back in the refrigerator, which is going to go back in there as soon as I'm finished with my video. I'll put this back in my fridge, and it'll stay in there for 4 to 7 days when I'm ready to make bread again. So with that cup of starter that I took out, I made my bread. I added 6 cups of bread flour. Now, I like Pillsbury bread flour. It tends to be what I use all the time. It's also what my friend uses. She has it on her sheet here. So that's what I use. 3 tablespoons of sugar, 2 teaspoons of salt, a 1/2 cup of vegetable oil, and 1 1/2 cups of lukewarm water. Once again, making sure that your water is truly lukewarm or on the warmer side of lukewarm, but not hot. And you just put that in a big glass bowl with 1 cup of your starter, and then you mix it all together. in this bowl, and you're going to have a pretty good size amount of dough when you finish, because that's going to be equivalent to 3 loaves of bread when you finish that. And so I got all of that dough mixed up together. You can mix it with a big wooden spoon for a while, but then it's going to get tougher to stir. It's going to be a little bit sticky probably. So once I kind of got it formed, I just put the spoon down and used my hands with a little bit of oil on it and just kind of mixed that dough together and got it into a ball. I took that and poured it out onto my countertop, took my large glass bowl, since I only have one really, really big one, and I washed it out really good and dried it. I covered it with some oil inside, and then I took that dough and I put it back in that glass bowl to rise. And just I just coated my hands with oil and covered it around that dough so it's a little bit shiny. It just helps it not to get stuck to everything if you have it covered with a little bit of oil. And then I put wax paper on the top and I set it to the side of my kitchen. And it stayed there all night long until 7 o'clock this morning. Now, this morning when I got up and I lifted that wax paper off that bowl, almost the entire bowl was full of dough. That's how much it had risen. So I just put a little bit of oil on my hands, a little bit of flour on the countertop there, and I dumped that dough out and I just kind of began to shape it a little bit. And that will make 3 loaves of bread. You can evenly divide that into 3 sections, and that's your 3 loaves. Let's say you don't want to make all 3 loaves at one time. You think, well, I just don't need that much bread at one time. Some people here sell their sourdough bread. In our area, it goes for about $5 a loaf. But if you don't want to use it all, what I have done, and I did it this time because I want to save some back, is you can put just a little bit of oil on that and put it down in a Ziploc bag. This is 1/3 of the amount of dough that I had. And what I'll do is in a couple days before I go to bed, probably today is Wednesday, so maybe on Friday evening, I will take this and I will roll out some small little balls, and I'll put it on a greased cookie sheet, and I will put a piece of wax paper over that overnight, and I will let those yeast rolls rise all night long on Friday night. And you don't have to have them really large because they're going to get much bigger. They're going to rise as that heat gets into them, and so overnight they're going to rise up and make these beautiful yeast rolls that we'll have for breakfast on Saturday morning. You can also use this dough, you can roll it out and you can put cinnamon and sugar on it and some butter on the inside, and then roll it like a log and cut it and make cinnamon rolls out of it. I've done that before too in the past. So remember that if you don't want to use all of your sourdough at one time, you can take part of your sourdough and put it in the refrigerator, and it'll last you a number of days. And then as you need it, you can take it out. Only thing you have to recall is that it's going to need about 8 to 10 hours to fully rise. 8 to 10 hours. So if you want to have fresh bread in the morning, put this out at night. You can put it in a bread pan, or you can put it out, like I said, as rolls or as cinnamon rolls, and then you'll have it fresh in the morning to bake. And probably if I'm doing dinner rolls, I might bake them about 15 minutes. And then the whole house smells like sourdough bread, and it's wonderful. Now, what I did with the other 2/3 is, instead of making 2 loaves of bread, I decided to make one long loaf. I have a favorite bread pan that I've had for a while. It is called a Pullman bread pan. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it. It's got a beautiful squared bottom on it. They're great pans. They've been around for a long time. I'm actually going to put a link to a couple of these pans in the description below, so that you can go over to my Amazon page, and if you want to order one, or you want to just take a look at the description about them over there on Amazon, you can. The one that I have is like this long. It's like almost like a piece of loaf. I mean, a whole sleeve of loaf bread is the size. And this is the lid. The bread pan that I have has a lid on it, so that if you're just making, not sourdough, but making a regular yeast bread, and you want to have a fully squared loaf like they sell in the grocery store, you can pull this onto the top of your dough as it's rising, and then bake it, and it will cook it on all 4 sides, in this container. And when you take it out, you will have a crust on it, a lot like what you have at the grocery store, and that's what that's for. About with the sourdough, I don't want that. I want my dough to fully rise and be full. My bread is due to bake within the hour, and so I want to show you this morning when I got up. Like I said, I took those pieces apart. I put 1/3 in this bag and put it in my fridge. I put I just kind of made the remaining dough into a loaf shape. I put it down into my greased pan. I put a piece of wax paper on it and set it to the side. And I've gone all day doing different things, laundry, and I made chicken noodle soup for lunch. I did a lot of other things. And now it's almost 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And so it's getting close to time for me to bake this bread. And I want to let you see what this looks like. It smells so good. This is the pan that I have, and this is what the dough looks like as it has risen. And so it is getting close to being ready to bake. And you can see this is a very long bread pan. A traditional bread pan would probably be about half this size. And I will link that in the description if you want to go over and see these. This is my go-to bread pan. I love these. They make the best bread with the best crust, and so I really enjoy that. So I thought I would show you what I'm getting ready to bake. When it is done and comes out of the oven, I will remove it from this pan pretty quickly. One of the reasons I do that is because a lot of times if you let bread that's been baked sit a lot in the pan as it cools, it will have condensation on it and it will get soggy. And you don't want your crust to get soggy. So what you're going to want to do, just give it a second to sit out of the oven and get stabilized. And then you want to turn it out and sit it on the counter without the pan so that that bread can continue to cool down. And if there's condensation at all, it'll be wicked away in the air and it won't be making your bread soggy. That is what I do to make sourdough bread, friends. I don't know how many of you love making your own breads. I know when I grew up, my mom made biscuits. She made them for us quite a bit. Sometimes for supper, we'd have biscuits and gravy. We grew up having cornbread. My mom baking bread was always something that I can recall. I don't think she ever made sourdough. We really just didn't have access to that or know very much about sourdough when I was growing up. But it has certainly been fun to learn about it over the years. And so I just invite you to step out and try something. Maybe if you've never tried it before, you'd like to jump in there and do it. Like I say, I will give you the little starter recipe underneath in the description. And then below that, I will guide you to my Amazon page where you can check out the bread pans that I use to make my sourdough bread. It is so wonderful to spend time with you talking today, friends. And as always, I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye bye.